Greetings, gentle listeners, to episode 30-something of Lesbian Talk.
35.
And this is going to be the last one before Halloween, so that's why I'm doing the Hagen-type voice. Hello. You might remember me from such reviews as Left Behind and Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS. Oh, sorry, Ilsa!
Left Behind is still my favorite.
You know, when the Left Behind remake happens, I'm going to remake my Left Behind review. I'm going to basically take the original script for the Left Behind review and I'm going to edit it to fit the Nicolas Cage movie and then I'm film it and try to wear the similar costume and all. And just...
I loved your costume for that. I have to say that was your first new review that I saw because I googled you and I found you on Geek Fighters way back when Geek Fighters existed. And I watched some of the old stuff that Nash hadn't showed. And then one day it was like a new review from Demon to Hagen, so I watched it. And that, like, it's kind of like, you know, the first Doctor that you see becomes your favorite Doctor. It's kind of like that.
Oh, well, the costume. That's the apologies. The cat is trying to destroy my Doctor Who figures. Oh, God damn it! Pause. And I'm back.
Are you okay?
If that Dalek was not missing an eye stalk and a plunger, it is now.
Oh, can you fix it?
There's a pile of Doctor Who related figures on the floor where the cat's been knocking them over. Putting them back up at times seems to be fairly pointless. They declare that those bookcases are their property and any action figures, regardless of whether it's a Doctor or not, are to be destroyed.
We should totally film something like that with the cats messing about on it, and then dub in, you know, some sound from Doctor Who or something.
These damn furry drashigs, the most dangerous creatures in the universe. Yeah. But where were we?
I forget.
Oh, Left Behind. The costuming. The costuming was it was this old bondage jacket that I still got somewhere, and the purple coat, and it was used in the Apocalypse. I believe it was used in Apocalypse and Revelation and Eat the Skullgirl as well. Though Left Behind, it looks really good because it does look vaguely fascist.
It looks really good in the black and white.
It does, yeah. It also looks a little bit like Edward Scissorhands.
Some of my favorite parts of that review was, "Holy crap, the Wailing Wall is wailing, literally." And then it's the same time in Israel and Iran. You're like, that's a trip considering they're an hour ahead. And calling him Mr. Science Beard and the Antichrist. That's not a castle. That's an imitation Canadian castle.
And people who have seen the Left Behind review, my obsession with being disparaging to imitation castles on the North American continent exists in real life as well.
Yeah, she's always disparaging something. I mean, I love you, dear. That and when Pedantic Minion corrects you, your eyes. I think it was how you did the black and white. Your eyes when he's correcting you just look electric.
Bear in mind, it could possibly be partly to do with the
that
SD
and
camera.
A lot of atheists were flying that day.
It could possibly be something to do with the SD camera, because you get less detail there, so you can sort of creates a look that you can sort of put your own meaning into.
I'm telling you that with your makeup, your eyes really stuck out. It looked good.
Ah, very good. But what was our word from last week?
It was collier, a ship bearing coal.
I'm sure there's an English actor who's old now, whose surname was Collier as well.
Probably.
I'm sure they were connected with Doctor Who somehow. I'm pretty sure I have seen an interview with an actor called something Collier on Doctor Who Classic DVD.
Guys, get on it. If you know, write the show.
But yeah, Collier, you know what would be really, really good to see in like a coal mine?
What?
Zombies.
Oh. So, if you don't know, I mean, I didn't really pimp this a lot because my real name is attached to it, and in the beginning I tried to remain very mysterious, but mostly everyone knows my real name now anyway. So, a while back, many years ago, I want to say it was 2008. No, it was 2007. I wrote this short story for an anthology that I was trying to get sell a story to. And the concept was zombies in a historical setting, and it had to be pre-1900. So Pennsylvania is also, sometimes called coal country. There's a lot of mines in Pennsylvania, and historically there always have been. And so I picked I like the idea of zombies in a coal mine, and so I set it in the 1880s or 1890s, never made it clear, with Welsh immigrant miners in Pennsylvania's coal country. Because, zombies, zombies are chasing you, you can get away. But zombies down in a mine, think about this. If you don't have a lantern, if you don't have a flashlight of any kind, it's completely and totally dark down there. Like total darkness. Not, how caves appear when they're shot in movies, because they're shot with ambient light so you can see what the hell's going on. We're talking total, complete darkness. Complete silence. No, very little ventilation, very little air.
Well, the thing actually, it's not complete silence. That would be less bad. The only noise that you can hear is like the reverberations of the noise that you're making, which means that if there's anything else there that's not you can't tell.
Right, so it's not like there's wind and birds and water dripping, not the classic quote-unquote cave sounds. And sounds can be magnified or diminished depending on the acoustics of where you are. Mm-hmm. Especially if you're claustrophobic, think about that. You're miles beneath the surface of the earth, in total darkness, with any number of The Walking Dead anywhere around you. And I think that's a lot more frightening.
It's a very good recipe for a zombies thing, for a film as well. I'm surprised no one's done it, though. It's filming well in a cave is probably those things that you'd think was cheap because, we don't need extra thing, we just need some rock, but it would probably be very deceptively expensive.
Well, it'd be really hard to insure as well, if you were doing it professionally. And, here's the thing. They didn't end up buying the story for the anthology, so I sold it to Pseudopod, the online horror e-zine that they do podcasts. And so they bought it for actually a pretty good rate for its word count. And it was podcasted by a gentleman, his name was Cheyenne Wright. And I believe he also is a webcomic artist too. And he has an amazing voice. And so it was podcasted. And if you search for it, Pseudopod, the story's called The Sons of Carbon County. And there actually is a Carbon County, Pennsylvania. And at one point, a reporter from their small little local paper called me to do an interview about the story. And I was like, sure. Okay, that's cool. But, you can search it, and it's about a half hour. It's a really good listen. He did a really good job with it. So, totally check that out.
See, in all of my years of watching good and bad films, I can only think of one horror movie that's set in a cave that actually works. And that's The Descent, and that's why I got you to watch it, even though I for some reason thought you'd enjoy it, because it was like a bunch of women doing a horror film in a cave that was really good, and then I forgot you don't like horror, so.
I like psychological horror. Well, see, that's what I wanted to bring into this, because what they wanted was specifically Romero-style zombies, where it's not really abundantly clear where the zombie infection is coming from, why it's caused. And it's left ambiguous at the end that, did the guy really survive or not, So it was definitely written to trope. But I wanted to bring a little bit of that psychological horror that I find frightening into it. But the good news is, if you ever want to make a movie out of it, I only sold first internet recording rights. So I still retain all the rights. So if you want to do a movie, call me.
The Descent was definitely not psychological horror, but it was very well done survival horror, even though that's a term for video games. Whenever you were talking, I was thinking that would make a coal mine would make a really great location for like a survival horror video game. Then I remembered cave levels in video games are always really boring because it's really hard to tell where you are. You get lost in a maze. It would probably end up being more frustrating than frightening, unless it was done really, really well.
That's true of anything, though. I know a lot of people loved Silent Hill 2. Like, I had a friend who said, oh my god, it's the scariest thing, you need to play Silent Hill 2. So I was like, okay. So I had, a PS2 at the time, and I played this, and then I got through all the cutscenes, and I got to the first, crawling, abomination. And I had nothing to fight it with. I had like a plank, and the plank broke. And I was like, this sucks. My friend's like, no, you're supposed to be afraid of random encounters, you're supposed to run away. And I said, well, unfortunately, the thing is that I've been playing video games for long enough that if there's a crawling abomination, I either want a sword half and over again the size of my own body, ninja powers, death blow moves, magical powers, or a really, really, really big gun. Because that's what I've been conditioned to by video games. I don't want to run away. How will I get all the golden items? And she was like, you're hopeless. And I was like, yeah, probably.
Well, yeah, you're in the mindset for a regular video game and not for a Silent Hill one. Like, I can definitely sympathize with you.
Like, I'm not in this to undergo some kind of experience. I mean, I know a lot of people are. It's like when I played Doom. I want to blow up demons. Of course I'm going to use the cheat codes. All I want to do is massacre demons when I get home from middle school. Because I've had a bad day and people bullied me. So I'm going to take it out on demons.
Today, the first part of this we were supposed to talk about the Arkham games. And, because last week I should have received my copy of Arkham Origins, because I've already beaten Arkham Asylum and Arkham City on hard. It's one of the, I admit perfectly, I am a complete casual gamer. I do not tend to play games on medium or hard because, honestly, I cannot be fucking bothered. I want to play it and I want to win it, and then I swing it back to watching stupid movies. But the Arkham games, I do like playing them, and I do like beating them several times. I usually start on easy, then go to medium, then hard, just to give myself little challenges. Although I maintain that to play Arkham games as most accurate, as most accurate as possible, you really need to play it on easy because Batman is apparently so amazing that he can do anything. So you got to play it on easy to make it most realistic. Maybe it's not as fun, but it's more realistic.
Of course, he's Batman.
But I was playing. 2 weeks ago, I was playing Saints Row 2 because it was lent to me. I really liked that, so I decided to buy Saints Row 3 as a stopgap until Arkham Origins arrived. Then, of course, Saints Row 3 arrived late, and so I just finished it yesterday. And so I can talk about the 2 Saints Row games that I have played, and I have a suggestion for how they should do an eventual 5th game, because I haven't played 4 yet, but I know what it's about. But for anyone who hasn't come across them before, basically, the first one was apparently, I haven't played it myself, basically a GTA San Andreas clone. Then the second one, it started getting silly. You would have like side activities where, in order to get respect, in order to do some stuff or do levels, you had to get enough respect to do them. So these side missions included wearing a flame retardant suit and then driving around blowing up cars, or aiming, or driving around in a septic truck and firing shit at everything. Fun little things like that.
Ooh.
Then Saints Row 3 went even more crazy, where, how shall I put it? You got the basic still crime simulator, you are part of this great big empire of crap like that. But then you got stuff like one of the villainous crime lords is a luchador wrestler, and in order to defeat his storyline, what you've got to do is do a bunch of training with Hulk Hogan, who's not playing Hulk Hogan, but it is voiced by Hulk Hogan,
That's kind of weird.
Who's an angry luchador wrestler who was demasked. So he's training you, and in order for him to train you, first of all, he makes you experience the worst type of pain possible, so he forces you to throw yourself in front of cars until you've made about enough money in insurance money. And then the next one, another one is, he tries to teach you the meaning of courage, of how to have
For a second, I thought you were going to say he tries to teach you the meaning of Christmas.
Oh, nearly. But he tries to teach you how to have no fear. So, of course, he puts you in a convertible in order for you to drive around. Then he puts a live tiger in the passenger seat. And
is it like?
It was like Life of Pi.
I was about to say, is he like GTA Life of Pi?
Basically.
That's awesome.
Then you got the
tigers on the freeway.
And then you got thing. One of the recurring things in 3 is Professor Genki, where it's like this Japanese quiz game. It's a parody of a Japanese sort of activity, like Takashi's Castle type thing. But you've got a gun. You got a bunch of like silly mascots and people dressed up as anime characters trying to kill you. You got to shoot them, get enough points that you can get to the exit, trying to avoid the fire and lightning traps. And then occasionally they send out these guys who are basically like humanized Incredible Hulks after you.
Don't get eliminated.
Yeah, and you got a section where you are filming I got the DLC set, so this comes in the DLC where you're trying to make a movie where you've been cast as the main character in this movie based on your life, so you are supposed to attack this fake military set, which is actually just full of real military, and you're attacking with laser guns, and you're killing real people, and it's absolutely ludicrous. But yesterday...
Would you call it absolutely luchadoric, Chris?
Yes.
Listen, you say stuff like that to me all the time, so...
I do. Then but yesterday, nearing the end, because I finished it yesterday, it went over the edge of craziness whenever you had to try and hack into someone's, mainframe. So of course they put you in a VR simulation of what the computer is like, and you're taking on your enemies. And gameplay wise, it's just like the rest of them. You're running around shooting things, but the things you're shooting are computer programs and all, and you are represented by something else. But they had it looking more like Tron than Tron Legacy managed. And they had but your avatar changed every so often. Sometimes you were a sex doll, sometimes you were a toilet, sometimes you were like this just collection of bits. Then, after defeating things there, then you were put into a choose your own adventure text game that you had to defeat in order to get into the next part of the game. Then it put you into like an Atari game involving building another tank.
Was there a reboot homage in there? Because that would have been perfect.
They're honestly, given that they like to parody absolutely everything, I would not be surprised if there was, but I did not spot it.
That was the best show.
It's
hexadecimal. I know, I heard about that. But I'm afraid they're going to cock it up, because everything that gets rebooted that I liked gets cocked up.
Oh, hopefully it won't. But the Saints Row games, I was having a great deal of fun. I heard a lot of people complaining that it wasn't as good as Saints Row 2, or like how one character, the personality completely changed or whatever, and it didn't really bother me.
Well, Yahtzee's been a big fan of it since the first Saints Row.
Yeah, and although he seems to think that 3 is the worst of the two because it sort of vacillates uneasily between semi-serious and completely ludicrous, and he doesn't really care for that.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to trying the 4th one, where it's basically your character has become the President of the United States, even though you've killed more people than Stalin.
I was wondering about that.
And then aliens invade and lock you into a Matrix-type simulation where you try to destroy things, and Keith David, a.k.a. Goliath, is your assistant president.
That's pretty awesome.
And he's playing himself.
He's playing a gargoyle?
No. Keith David, who voiced Goliath, is playing himself as the vice president.
Oh, okay. As Keith David. I thought you meant that, like, he was playing the character Goliath. I was like, wow, rights-wise, how did they pull that off?
Well, in the trailer, when they show Keith David, playing Keith David, they actually have like this rally, and it's like this person with a sign saying, "I love Goliath."
That's awesome. I gotta say though, I watched the shit out of that series every day after school, and that was one of the best done animated series I think that I've ever seen.
Oh, I agree.
It was. I think it was just as good as Batman the Animated Series.
It was very, very, very fucking good.
And not for nothing that, pretty much half the cast of Next Generation popped in at some point to do voice work.
Not just Next Generation, some from I think every single Star Trek series was somehow put in there.
Really?
I think so, yeah. Elisa Maz's mum was played by Nichelle Nichols.
Okay.
Avery Brooks turned up, I'm very sure, in one episode playing like the Sentinel. I'm quite sure that the woman who played Janeway, she turned up.
Well, no one cares about her.
I think the only Star Trek show that didn't get appeared was Star Trek Enterprise.
Good, because it was shit. I mean, what? Actually, I shouldn't be mean to the woman that played Janeway, because apparently she, this happened on a day that I was not at work, unfortunately, that she came into the cafe and, ordered some food and stuff like that, and my one coworker was like, oh my gosh, can I say something? And our manager was like, okay, fine. And she comes over, she's like, oh my gosh, are you offended? But I love you, you're so great. And she was like, oh, thank you. And that really makes me happy to know. Thanks, I'm so glad I met you. And like, apparently it was like such a class act, so, you know.
Lol. Oh, I just remembered of something that reminded me of Preaching to the Perverted.
She said?
Well, in Saints Row, I remembered something in Saints Row 3 that was like preaching.
Okay.
Yeah, you have a bit where you're having to break into an S&M dungeon to rescue this pimp who was being captured and sort of kept in the gimp stable.
Captive pimp.
Yes. Who he's had a tracheotomy, so he can only speak electronically, but he's had like a voice alteration thing put in there, and he uses a cane with a microphone, so he sticks his microphone to it, so he sounds like he's singing everything.
The Autotune pimp rides again.
Yeah, but they rescue him from the gimp stable, and unfortunately, he's like attached to a chariot, a la Gwendolyn. Mm-hmm. So they actually have a chase with gimps in chariots, fighting each other, having a gunfight against each other, driving down the street.
Okay.
And then there's another level where you have to get smuggled into this area as a sex slave. That's the only way you can get you in there, so you don't know what happens to the main character between them explaining the plan to them and them waking up naked and covered in horrible, horrible things, but you do an entire section of a level naked. And it's absolutely wonderful when you run at the enemy. You can do this sort of takedown, which involves leaping onto them and throwing your groin right into their face to knock them to the ground.
Oh no, an actual cock slap.
Yes.
Not sure how I feel about this.
And then, you have side missions like assassinations where you can, one of them was you had to kill a moral guardian, like a Tony Perkins type. So the way to get her attention, to get her out in the streets so you can kill her, is you had to streak and sort of offend enough people, and then she would appear and you could gun her down. It's very silly but fun. And
that sounds like fun.
Ignoring the fourth game, which may or may not be the last one, I had an idea for a fifth.
And what is that idea?
They really should do the Saints, because that's the name of the gang. They move into a new city, and this city is sort of inspired roughly by like Metropolis or Gotham or something. And it's a city. It's got its own superheroes, and each one is a parody of a real superhero. So you can do sort of like a 1960s Batman type thing, but you are in charge of one of the crazy supervillain gangs who are all very similar looking.
I'd play that.
And very themed. So you defeat each of the superheroes, and you get other gangs. You could have like a parody of the Joker, or the parody of the Penguin, who for some reason their leader is just a literal penguin. And that is so what they should do for the next game. If they could do a crossover with DC, so that you could actually have the Saints in Gotham type thing.
I'd play that. Although I'm going to be joining I have a Wii, but it doesn't really count as a next-gen console, so I'm so excited to play Assassin's Creed Pirate, even though I haven't played any of the other Assassin's Creed games. I've only seen other people play them. That I pre-ordered it, and I'm gonna, when I get back from the UK, I'm gonna get a cheap refurbished Xbox, just so I can play.
And when you're over here, I will let you play my Assassin's Creed 3, because it's most likely going to have very similar gameplay. And controls and stuff, see what you think.
I'm gonna be a pirate.
Because I like the Assassin's Creed games. I hated one. One was terrible, but I did like the others, and I'm looking forward to Assassin's Creed Pirate, as you put it, as well.
I watched my then roommate play one, and he played it quite a bit of it. And it seems to me that the Templars aren't too bright if you can get past them just by walking in a slow and thoughtful manner.
Yeah, it's one of the problems.
I'm walking in a slow and thoughtful manner. I'm obviously not going to think about committing any crimes, medieval officer.
I'd love to see a remake of the first Assassin's Creed game that uses the engine for Assassin's Creed 2 or 3, because Assassin's Creed 1 in many ways was like a demo version of it. It wasn't, or a beta version. The bugs were not all worked out. By the time 2 and 3 came along, the bugs were worked out.
Well, I'll try it at yours and see. Because you were like, here's one of the Arkham games, you should play this. And I'm like, I'm not smart, so I'll watch you.
You don't need to be smart to play the Arkham games. Actually,
I have to confess it. Like, sometimes I write video game articles for Nerdvice. And I'm debating, Vera asked me, do you want to have a regular column? And I said, I'd have to come up with a name. So I'm debating calling it the whiny gamer. Because I realize that whenever I'm playing a video game, I'm always, like, internally whining. Like, especially new stuff, because I hate to admit it, I mean, maybe I was coordinated back in the day when games are simpler, but I'm just so uncoordinated. Like, years and years ago, when the first Halo game first came out, my little cousin Lukey, who's now in college, I really can't call him Lukey anymore, I was over, and he's like, hey, do you want to play a video game? And I was like, yeah, sure, we can play a video game. He's like, let's play Halo, I just got it. I was like, alright. And the problem is, and I had this problem with Medal of Honor 2, which is why I really rocked it with 1, but I really got nowhere with 2, is I can't double axis toggle in real time. I mean, I can't XY axis aim. Like, it has to be like an auto thing or, you know, some kind of freeform kind of aiming.
You'd be quite lucky with the Arkham games. The Arkham games, you do have that. You have, if you're facing the right direction, you can fire like an automatic batarang, so you don't actually need to aim it. For the remote-controlled ones, they do require practice, I'll admit that.
Yeah, like, he was like, let's play Versus, and I was like, okay. And by the time I would look, oh, he's that direction. Well, oh, no, now I'm looking at the sun. Oh, wait, no, now I'm looking at my feet. Okay, now I'm at the right vertical axis. Now I have to, oh, now I'm dead. And he's like, you're not very good at this. I was like, yeah, well. I
think it's to do with, because although he'd never played Halo before, he's probably played other games that used similar control systems, and you don't have the muscle memory for that type of control system.
This is true, but I can beat the original Super Mario Land in like 25 minutes on Game Boy, because I have the muscle memory for that.
Yeah,
oh God, I'm old. I'm so old.
When you played a lot of video games, that's the way that they were. They've changed a bit. So with the Arkham games,
back in my day,
they are good, and they don't take a massive amount of. They're not overly complicated. The way that the fighting system is set up, it's like a rhythm game. To be honest, it's you've got to just time things right, and it doesn't take a lot of effort to actually get into the flow of how to do it. It's like a really good beginner's sort of action-y series. It's a wonderful little engine they created.
I guess, although I do. They're good RPGs for Xbox, because I will confess I do love a good 80 to 100 hour RPG, especially if it has a good story.
I don't think I have any RPGs on my one, so I don't know. I don't know much about the state of RPGs on Xbox, I'm afraid.
No, I'll do some research. I'll just ask Twitter. God knows I follow enough video game people. Somebody will know. Because that was the best part of PS and PS2 is I just don't know why, but there seemed to be a lot more really good RPGs, and not really Final Fantasy, because Final Fantasy's become so trope that
on Xbox I do believe they have Eternal Sonata, which is
I've heard good things about that.
It's this Japanese one about Chopin, which I have a copy of. I played part of. I never got really far into though, so. That might be one to look at, and since it's like many years old, you probably get it for very cheap.
That's true. So yeah, so if you are inclined to comment on this episode, if you watch it on Blip or YouTube or something, and you have suggestions, tell me or tweet at me.
Yeah,
I can't promise I'll buy everything, but we'll see.
You could have a say in shaping Omega's Xbox collection.
Damn right. But honey, do you know what time it is?
Timeout time?
No, it's time for a transition into the next part of the show. Because I always say, do you know what time it is? So we have another great song from Mr. Tony Goldmark. Fantastically talented young man.
The return of the Goldmark.
And, yeah, so we'll be right back. One, two.
The man in the ice cream van doesn't trust me to make up my mind. The man in the ice cream van makes me try every flavor he's got. And if I'm allergic, he'll hold my nose and force it down my throat. The man in the ice cream van seems to think every woman is his. Vroom, vroom. My cousin brought his girlfriend to the van. That's the last time she's ever been seen. The very next week he unveiled a new flavor that tastes just like her spleen. Hot damn! I don't know why his hypnotic eye will perplex. Instead of crying tears, his eyeballs vomit insects. The man in the ice cream van has a dog. Has a dog? Has a dog. Has a dog that flies.
Hey, look, there's a dog of the ice cream man just flying around and lending a hand. Hey, look, there's a dog of the ice cream man just flying around and lending a hand. Hey, look, there's a dog of the ice cream man just flying around and lending a hand. Not talking about the hand of the ice cream man, it's a hand from a garbage can at Disneyland.
The van of the ice cream man just got its brake line cut.
Whee!
And it rolls down a great big hill as the kids run after their dreams.
Yay!
Rolls off a cliff and the kids fall down, and the only survivor is the ice cream man. If you look at the van, then you look away, and then look back, it ain't there. The man in the ice cream van has a mustache in front of his head. Whenever he moves his head to one side, the mustache stays hung in the air.
Huh?
A friend of 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 an enemy said he stole it from an elderly, a homeless orphan, and also that he grinds up little children into
Out of the way!
into the snow cones.
I saw the man from the ice cream van right outside my window. He said,
Come with me in the night. I will give you 1,000 lives, and together we'll walk through sadness, swim through madness, prohibited thrills. I'll give you the access. We'll have lots of fun. We'll be number one. We'll travel up to Michigan, learn to shoot a gun. We'll sit on the cat. We'll eat monkey fat, meet Abraham Lincoln, and smash him with a bat. We'll shave your sister's head while she's sleeping in the bed. Then we'll tattoo on a swastika and turn her to the feds. Jump in a fjord, find a mythic sword, and we'll slit each other's throats in the name of the Lord. Slowly you'll learn, for blood you'll yearn. Civilization will burn, and in return, I'll give you ice cream.
And then I'll eat your liver and drink your blood. I'm gonna eat your liver and drink your blood. He's gonna eat your liver and drink your blood. He's gonna eat your liver and drink your blood. He's gonna eat your liver and drink your blood.
The man in the ice cream van spikes the cookie dough with poison drugs.
Uh-oh.
The cops and the feds can't do a damn thing. They're hooked on the poison drugs. But one day when he turns his back, I'll call in a favor from some chainsaw maniacs and that ice cream man with the questionable past. Yeah, that ice cream man better watch out for his ass. He'll freeze, he'll scoop, he'll melt, he'll grind, he'll regret never letting me make up my mind. 'Cause the chainsaw wielding bunch of Vikings gonna kick his mustache.
Ah, that man has a voice like a very nasal angel.
Psh. Meanie.
Not being mean, he's very talented and he's very funny, and I'm a bit sad that he's one of the members of the Reviewverse community that I have not met yet.
We should have him on the show at some point.
Oh yeah, and then, although I would pretty much be telling him, come over to the UK, I want to take you to Alton Towers, it'd be great. Meh, 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 meh.
In that tone of voice?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's time for everybody else's favorite part of the show except for Hoggins. It is time for Giovanni's Trivia Fact. And
I love that, Giovanni.
You lie. You lie so very bad.
I love Giovanni.
Anyway, Giovanni, are you with us today? Yeah, boss, I'm here. And don't worry, I won't take it personal. I know she says a lot of things about me that aren't true, but I'm going to muscle through because I don't take bullying personally.
You should.
Yeah, Hoggins. So anyway, did you know that today's trivia fact is tied into what you guys were talking about? We're going to have a mine fact. A fact about mining.
Mine!
Exactly. So, do you know how many countries in the world actually produce salt? They mine or produce it? 83. It's true. World production in 2010 was 266,500,000 tons. The biggest producers being the United States and China. So yeah, think about your table salt next time.
That's why you guys are so salty.
Yeah, I'm a salty dog. Anyway, to all my adoring ladies out there, hopefully some of you are lobsters. I'll see y'all next week.
I love you, Giovanni.
At least you were civil. That's all I can ask.
So what are we talking about now? Something that was teased in an earlier episode?
Well, no, because it's time for the story from the store.
This
Yay,
is true.
one time at the store.
So everyone, forget I said that, or just keep it in your mind that something that was teased in an earlier episode is going to be talked about after this.
Dun 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 dun. Well, actually, if you're just joining us, if this is the first time you listened, I've worked for a large chain bookstore for nearly a decade, and I've pretty much seen it all. The bizarre, the hilarious, the horrible, and the amazing. And today's the story of one of them. So, last Saturday, I was working, and what we did was it was a Halloween story time. We had one of the girls from Cafe was in a costume and everything. She actually had on this huge Olivia mascot costume and was bumping into, furniture. But we had the kids come, and they could trick-or-treat through various parts of the store, and they came in costume, and they got stickers and stuff, and it was really cute. Because we had this little girl who came up to me, and she's like, "Excuse me, but I am a dragon." And I said, "Would you like a piece of candy?" Dragon? She said, "Yes, actually." But many years ago, in my first store, what we did was we had the Halloween story time, and then what I was supposed to do is basically I was paid to hang out in costume in kids all day while somebody was working in the section and doing all the stuff that had to be done. And when we got enough kids throughout the day, take them around trick or treating to various parts of the store. And that year I had a whole bunch of Halloween parties to go to, so I just sunk $80 into a really, really, really good pirate outfit. So, it was coming up towards the end of the day, and I'd taken kids, around a whole bunch of times. And this one family comes in. Now, I'd seen the daughter before because she was in her teens and she had some developmental issues. And I usually would see her in with either her mother, her father, or a young aide that she worked with. And she liked to sit in the same chair and read Dr. Seuss, but she basically memorized Dr. Seuss. So she would say the story really quickly while she turned the page. And I liked the family. They were nice, but I didn't realize until they all came in together that day that she had a little sister. So the mom and dad, sit down with the older daughter, and she's reading Dr. Seuss, and the little girl comes up to me and she goes, "Excuse me, but are you really a pirate?" And I was like, "Oh yes, I'd really be a pirate. That's true." And she's like, "Wow, so where is your ship parked?" I was like, "'Tis docked at the Schuylkill River, my dear." And I took the turnpike out. And so she keeps asking me all these questions, like, do your mom and your dad work on your pirate ship, and all this other stuff. So we didn't have any other kids, so I took her around to all of the trick-or-treating areas. And she basically followed me around the section while I was straightening, just asking me, tell me about your pirate life. Do you do this? How do you go to the doctor if you're a pirate? And I just was making up all this stuff because, I LARP, so I'm good at this kind of thing. And it dawned on me that this poor little girl, it can't be easy having a sibling with a lot of special needs. So this little girl was probably starved for attention. And so, I just let her tag along, and I kept talking to her, and eventually the family left and stuff. And then I went home, and I realized, even though my throat was completely shot from using my pirate accent all day, that there was a little girl who really did believe that I was a pirate with my ship docked on the Schuylkill River. And that was pretty cool.
Aw, you made that little girl feel happy.
Yeah, we do that sometimes.
You destroy things.
No, we don't. We do not destroy things of beauty at all.
So, yes, because you're not the Taliban. So, what is that? But they built the giant statues of Buddha.
Oh, okay. All of a sudden the Taliban was coming up and I didn't know what was going on.
Well, the Taliban, if you were into sort of ancient history and stuff, they pissed you off long before 9/11 because they blew up these two ancient, huge fucking statues of Buddha, which I don't know exactly how tall they were, but they were really fucking big and they were about 1,500 years old.
I heard about that.
It was horrific. But one thing I noticed when looking up, I just randomly like to look up some subjects occasionally, so I looked up giant statues, and I was like, holy shit, almost all the biggest statues in the world are in Asia. That's cool. But anyway, on to your subject.
So, do you want to do the intro? Because you almost did it before.
This is a subject that was teased about in an earlier episode. This is, if Omega was ever on the British quiz show Mastermind that you may or may not have seen, this would be Omega's subject. This is the thing that Omega knows most about, except possibly Omega.
Yeah, I know the most about me.
This is the Franklin expedition.
So, we kind of started talking about it last week, and I said, we should talk about this, and then we realized that's probably a bad idea, because I literally could talk for about an hour. I had two friends.
Honey, you could talk about it for longer than an hour.
That's true. As I had two friends once that I was reading The Terror by Dan Simmons, which is it's historical sci-fi that involves a lot of the factual elements of the Franklin expedition. And we were about to get in the car to drive about 45 minutes north to a LARP. And they were like, "What's the Franklin expedition?" I'm like, "Really? You want me to tell you?" They're like, "Yeah, sure." I'm like, "Okay." And then so I started talking when we were leaving the house and locking up. And I talked when we were on 81 and about when we were pulling into the apartment complex where our friends were. So I'm like, but, I mean, I could talk about this all day, but yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. And I realized I'd probably been talking for about an hour. My one friend was like, "Wow, I feel like I could write a paper about that now." And I was like, "I'm sorry, I just lecture sometimes, I can't help it." But back in the 1980s, I believe it was 86 that Owen and Beatty concluded their expedition. And a little later that year, Nova, the show Nova on PBS, aired the episode Frozen in Ice. They were two scientists that they went up to Beechey Island, which is one of the locations of a lot of artifacts from the Franklin expedition. And I saw this episode.
Honey, you haven't explained what the Franklin expedition
I know.
is.
I'm giving the background.
Okay.
I saw this episode as a child, and I was frightened because they exhumed some bodies, but I was also morbidly curious, and so I spent many, many years, reading all of the books that I could, finding out all of the information that I could, and it's kind of become like the little fascination for me. So, back in the day, the British Admiralty was pretty much convinced that there was a way that you could get from the UK, from Europe, mainland Europe, to Asia without having to sail all the way down the Horn of Africa and all the way back up through the Indian Ocean, which takes forever, it's dangerous, you sink most of your money to supplies, and it's just not really viable for trade. So the Panama Canal hadn't been built yet, but they were convinced that in extreme northern Canada there was a passage, a northwest passage, through all those little teeny islands and glaciers up there that you could just...
Of course, there is one now.
Well, there's one now because of global warming, true, and technically, if you're not including the ice, there was one then, but we'll get to that in a second. But so they realized that if they could discover that, if they could chart that, that would be a really, really, really great shipping route. And they spent decades upon decades just sending out expedition after expedition that a lot of them ended in horrific tragedy, because part of the story is the story of the Victorian hubris behind it, especially, no offense, honey, the British Victorian hubris of, well, we're just going to tackle nature then because we're British.
Well, they were very full of hubris, were the Victorians.
Yes, this is very true.
It's a lot like the Americans of today.
Yeah, I would draw a parallel to that. There were many problems with this, and one of the problems was that they often would hire Inuit guides who would tell them, it's not really effective to man-haul huge sledges across the Arctic. It's really more cost-effective if you have a few dogs about and have light sleds, and then you make the dogs do all the running, and you go really, really fast, pretty quickly. Also, you should eat this and this and this and this. And they said, no, I'm not going to listen to you, savages, no. So, scurvy was a huge problem. I mean, the properties of vitamin C had by that time been discovered, obviously, but the problem is that, that barrel or two of lime juice or lemon juice loses its acidity, it loses its vitamin C at catastrophic rates the longer you hold it. So the less fresh it is, the less vitamin C it has. So eventually, if you're on a 2, 3, 4-year expedition, you're going to end up with scurvy if you don't have some kind of natural vegetable, if you don't have some kind of fresh meat to supplement your diet. You will end up with scurvy, and scurvy is pretty horrific. So they conceived this huge expedition, and they had two ships, the Erebus and Terror, that this was cutting-edge technology. They both had locomotive steam engines in them. Thought
that was their first problem. They called their ship the Terror. There was no way in hell a story about a ship called the Terror is going to end well unless you're a pirate.
It was already called the Terror. They were refitted gunboats, basically.
And then, even if your main character is a pirate, they're probably going to get hung.
Well, yeah, okay, they are pretty, ominous sounding names. But so, this was the cutting line, the bleeding edge of technology. What they also did, the Admiralty, is they had become snookered in by a guy named Goldner. And Goldner had canning technology, and canning technology back then was in its infancy. The canning technology was so old that the can opener hadn't been invented yet. You broke it open with a hatchet. But so Goldner promised the Admiralty, oh, look at all these wonderful, delicious things that I have in a can, and see the way that they're canned, they won't go bad. They'll stay in the same condition until you open them. Because the way that Goldner canned was, you had the tin can, and then it was stuffed with all the foodstuffs, and then it was sealed, but it was sealed with what's called sugar of lead solder, and sugar of lead dissolves into anything acidic. Tomatoes, for an example. If you can tomatoes in something that contains lead, they will leach all of the lead into themselves. So you had these things that were improperly and sloppily closed with lead solder, and then they were dropped into a superheated solution, which was thought to sterilize them. Now the problem was, which they didn't know, well Goldner probably knew, but the Admiralty didn't know at the time, is it wasn't heating up the center. So Goldner was a shyster. He bought offal, basically OFFAL, the stuff that was left over from markets. He bought bone and gristle. He weighted stuff down with rocks and sand, whatever he could throw into the cans to deliver to the Admiralty, and he underbid, so he got their bid. So if you have vegetables, especially that have been from the ground, that have been unwashed, unsterilized, you can end up with botulism. And botulism creates spores, and those spores are very strong.
I'm actually seeing parallels between this and things that are done today.
Mm-hmm.
When you get government contracts being handed out to people who are complete either crooks or just pieces of shit, and the government doesn't do any oversight. It's actually in a perverse way, it's a libertarian's wet dream. The private market, government's out of everything, and there is no government oversight to make sure that people's creativity is kept in check. Because the guy was very creative.
Well, eventually the Admiralty did catch on about a few decades later, and they came after Goldner, and he disappeared into mainland Europe and was never seen again.
Well, hopefully he ended up nailed to a tree somewhere. Even today, there are a couple of governments have bought mine detectors, which are basically electric dowsing things.
I heard about that, yeah.
Yeah, this sort of shit still goes on.
Oh, yeah.
Government contracts given out to private companies and stuff. The private companies have an incentive to bullshit, unless and the government, because they're giving it over to the private individuals, they don't feel the need to pay attention to it. Government contracts are almost always a bad thing in my view.
And in this case, it was one of the contributing factors. I mean, you can't look at this and say there was one contributing factor, but it was a whole bunch of things. For example, in 1845, when the expedition sailed out, it was the end of what environmental scientists called the Little Ice Age, which lasted for a few hundred years, which the temperatures were, on the average, a lot colder than they are now. So a lot of the pack ice that usually would have melted during the summer was locked fast. Those channels were jammed with glacial ice, and no one could have known that at the time.
Wasn't it suggested that the Little Ice Age was caused by volcanic eruption?
No, that was 1816, often called the year without the summer, because I think it was Krakatoa or Pele. I'm pretty sure it was Krakatoa in 1815. But no, the Little Ice Age, honey, that started a few hundred years before that. That's why the Napoleonic Wars went the way that they did, because it wasn't supposed to be that cold usually in Russia, but it had been for the past few hundred years.
Okay.
I can get you an exact date on it, but there was the lead, the botulism, the hubris of the Victorians, the fact that the pack ice had jammed the channels. Those were all contributing factors. That kind of, it's like, in hindsight you can say, well, of course, this is going to happen, but they didn't know at the time. So they had Sir John Franklin, who, he was old. He was in his 60s. He was probably too old, but he begged the Admiralty for this. He's also known as the man who ate his own shoes, because he led a disastrous overland expedition in extreme northern Canada, where, again, he didn't listen to the native guides that he had. Many members of his company starved, and they actually ended up boiling their own shoe leather. He had been the governor of Tasmania for a while. He wanted to make his mark, in the world, and he was beginning to believe that he was becoming too old to do so. Now, he was married to Lady Jane Franklin, and she becomes important later. So they sail off, 128 crew members and Franklin, 2 ships, captained by Fitzjames and Crozier. Now, Fitzjames was an Englishman, and Crozier was an Irishman. He would have been the perfect man for the expedition's leader. However, he wasn't seen as a true gentleman because he was Irish. So they along with their supply ship, the Beretta Junior, they went to Greenland, and then there were 5 men that were discharged.
The Beretta Junior doesn't look like Sarah Palin.
No, it was just a supply ship, but 5 men were discharged to the Beretta Junior as being ill or unfit for work. So those lucky 5 might have thought, God damn it, but they really dodged the metaphorical bullet. So they were last seen by whalers heading past the Hudson, and we know that they wintered at Beechy Island. Basically, in the Arctic, it just gets so cold that the water freezes. Your ship becomes icebound. So the smartest thing to do is to make for like the lee of an island. Then you have the land supporting the ship and just winter there. You can use the island for buildings, which they did. They built a cult house. They had a blacksmith's forge. They had a whole bunch of stuff there. They also left cairns, or little piles of rocks with a message case inside. If anyone finds us, we were here, we went this way, stuff like that. Now, in the 2 winters that they spent at Beechy Island, there were 3 recorded deaths, and those were the 3 graves that were found by one of the teams sent after Franklin. Now, they left in 1845, and this was meant to be a 2 to 3 year mission. That's how much supplies that they had. And eventually, when it got to be around year 4 and no one had heard anything, Lady Jane Franklin began to beg the Admiralty, please, send expeditions, and finally mustered the political and social power to do so. So there were many, many expeditions that in the late 1840s and early 1850s, Ray, McClintock, Hall, that all would bring back these bits of evidence that we have now. What we do know is they finally went south towards Victoria Pass. Well, they were naming all this stuff as they went along, and became icebound again. Now, we know at some point that, we know what happened because of the records that were left behind. There was a message cairn where Crozier did leave, Crozier and Fitzjames, because he was still alive, did leave a message of what had happened and where they were going, that Franklin did die, and he was buried at sea. We also find that there's an abnormally high death ratio of officers to able-bodied seamen, and Crozier and Fitzjames writes that they're icebound. One of the ships is sinking, and one of the ships will be abandoned, and they are going to try to make south towards the Back's Great Fish River, about 600 miles overland. And this is the part where there's a lot of speculation about what happened. There's a lot of speculation, but there's not a lot of evidence. But what evidence that we do have points to a horrific end for these people. The going theory right now is they had extreme tolls on their health. These men were being poisoned by the lead in Goldner's products. They were dying of scurvy. Officers, it can be explained that the high mortality rate for officers were more likely to have the choice rations rather than hardtack or boiled meat or the stuff that the regular seamen got. Now, if a seaman became ill with scurvy, they thought, we'll give him a can of these vegetables, and that will give him more vitamin C. But in some cases, that would just make the problem worse. These were men who weren't in their right mind. They were starving. They had scurvy. Lead poisoning does take a mental toll, neurological toll.
Yeah, it really fucks up your mind.
So you had cases where they were man-hauling these huge sledges, things that weighed up to 2 tons, these small ships, full of the complete detritus of Victorian life, copies of novels, curtain rods, really foolish things that why would you bring these with you? And so
how did they know that they were dragging all these around? I thought the last thing we heard of them was from one of the message cairns.
Because hold on, that's the last word that we have. We have physical evidence. We have the bodies and the artifacts that were discovered. This was the last word of we are alive, we are doing this, we are going to try to do that, blah blah blah. That's the last direct communication that we have from them. we have other hearsay records from Inuit that people in later expeditions talked to them, and Inuit said, yes, we saw them, we gave them some meat, and then they went down that way. Or, yes, see, look, I have this sword that someone traded me for, you see. So they were able to find artifacts. There was a group that turned back and went back to the ships, and it looks like set up camp on their way back. And some of the bones that were found there do show telltale signs of cannibalism. And this was something that was glossed over for many decades. That when, especially when Ray and McClintock brought this evidence back, the Admiralty refused to hear it because, of course, no Englishman would engage in cannibalism. That's foolish. There were groups that, tried to stay by themselves. There's one place called the Boat Place, where they found 2 bodies in one of these small boats that looks like they had just sat down and couldn't go any further, and they died. There was one man who appears to have died as he walked, and some artifacts were recovered from him. There was one area called Starvation Cove where they found several bodies of these men who just, their bodies gave out on them. They were so starved, they were so deficient of every kind of vitamin and mineral that they fell. And it's believed. Now, Crozier was the last officer confirmed to have been seen alive. And that was from a verbal report by some Inuit. I would like to believe, because I do see Crozier as a somewhat maligned character in all this, I would like to believe that at least he made it to at least a band of Inuit, and perhaps continued living on his life, and having children. But I know that he probably died with the rest of them. And he's kind of almost become, Sir John Franklin has, a national hero of Canada, because this was all in the Canadian territories that this took place. And, eventually they collected data, they collected evidence. I mean, even Owen Beatty, who went up in the 80s and exhumed the bodies on Beechy Island, they did a preliminary autopsy, and they found levels of lead in their bones that was literally 10s and 20s of times what a modern exposure would be. So that's a pretty good indication that the people who supported the lead theory are at least partially correct.
Reminds me of the remember the info I gave you about the Mount Everest death zone?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it's the same kind of climate. The only difference is the air's not as thin.
Yeah, so it takes you longer to die.
Yeah. I mean, it's horrific, but it's very interesting because it is one of those mysteries. And now Dan Simmons, who's a sci-fi writer, he wrote an amazing book called The Terror. Now, I'll warn you, it's about 800 or 900 pages. It's a huge book, but he does incorporate every single known actual historical fact that we have, and I was very impressed by that. And actually, AMC is turning it into a miniseries, either a miniseries or a full show. I can't remember, but that's going to be coming in the next few years.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about that since they announced it, so I'm hoping they didn't drop the idea like they did with the William Wallace show. Oh, that was Stars, though.
Yeah, the last thing I heard was from February of this year, so
hopefully. I find the Franklin story affecting. I remember I hadn't heard of it until you talked to me about it, and then I watched the Nova thing and all that, and it's just like, those poor, stupid people.
Well, stupid, yes, in a cultural sense, but not in an individual sense. They were men who, they were told, that you have the best resources, you have the cutting technology, you are English, or British, and, you're going to find the Northwest Passage. They were being paid very well. And the food that they got, paradoxically, was probably better than, the crap that they would have eaten, working in some factory. Or, trying to eke out a living. So these were men who, they signed up, they took the King's Coin, they signed up to do this job, and unwittingly, I mean, even though they died horrific deaths, unwittingly found a place in history.
It's two sort of things that it reminds me of. One is the story of Shackleton, although Shackleton, that's like the light and happy and fluffy version of the Franklin expedition, because I think everyone in Shackleton's thing survived, although they did last for years and years and years trying to. The only death in Shackleton's one was the ship's cat, who was shot by Shackleton. Although,
if he did, Franklin did have vindication, because it was later revealed in later years when the pack ice melted, His theory was correct. He is credited as the discoverer of the Northwest Passage, if not the first person to sail through. That was the Norwegians, but.
The other person that this reminds me of is Scott, the British guy who attempted to find the pole.
Mm-hmm.
And like Franklin, like they basically were convinced because they're British they were going to do it, and they did not have the better equipment and everything, and the Norwegians completely kicked their asses because the Norwegians are used to dealing with that level of cold. It's another bit of course we're going to win, we're British type hubris, and ending up dead. And Franklin, I believe, if I remember correctly, Franklin, like Scott, was viewed as sort of a national hero until semi-recently, but more as more time passes, basically they're getting less and less well thought of, and it's going from those brave people trying to show off how brilliant the British are, it slowly morphs into those guys are fucking idiots. Stop, arrogant pricks.
Well, the thing is that hindsight is always 20/20, and at the time, the Victorians thought they stood astride the world.
And it's like people who are people in the USA today who are convinced that America is, the manifest destiny type thing. Every country that stands across the world like a colossus will eventually fall, and then it's just the people from the country later on will realize, man, we were stupid back then. But whenever you're the most powerful country, you feel invincible, and you're not.
That's a sobering thought. You know what else is sobering? The
end
dictionary. Of the show. Well, it's like I said, I could probably talk about this for a way long time, but we only have an hour for Lesbian Talk, so, dictionary in hand, what page should I turn to?
152.
Okay. Alrighty. 1 or 2?
2.
Out of 27.
I'll be easy on you. 1.
Cross-legged, sitting with legs crossed.
Okay.
Or as we call it in America, sitting Indian style.
Cross-legged.
That's not racist at all.
I have just received a thank you message from 1/6 Slayer, who provided the song last week, basically thanking us for playing their song and offering more in future. So if you're listening to this, 1/6 Slayer, thank you very much, and I think we'll play another one of yours next time.
So yeah, you guys, if you haven't checked him out, go check him out. He's on YouTube, 196 Slayer. Yeah.
So if you have a band, or if you do music by yourself, then please send us it. We will play it, but try to stick it to ones that you aren't covers, that you own the rights to. Ideally, if you don't have a record company or anything like that, because we'd want to make sure it's all above board. We're trying to keep this as copyright friendly as possible.
We don't want to get a takedown.
And
we're good kids.
And guys from the Vault of Xtoth, they did the cover version of Let Your Rich for me for Hagen, for my Hagen reviews. If you guys want to send us songs, you can as well.
So yeah, promote yourselves. So next episode, we don't know how that's going to be done because I'm going over to the UK actually on Thursday. So we might record over there, we might not. It might be special, it might not.
Yeah, and she's leaving on Thursday night. This is currently Monday night, so Monday the 28th. So, well, it's Monday night for me, it's Monday afternoon for her. But depending on when this goes up, this might be a little bit later than that.
Yeah.
Or it might not. We don't know. This
so
might be before or
anything
after.
could happen or nothing could happen, so be prepared.
Yeah. And we might record one while she's over here, we don't know.
Yeah. So, in that case, I have been the Omega, and who do we want to have been this week?
Dan Kana, a freelance artist with a love for Transformers.
Okay, there you go.